Hey guys, what's up? Penguin Pat here, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite great buildings and one of the great buildings I get the most questions about. That's right, we're going to talk about Alcatraz. Now, there are three major misconceptions about this building that I talk about on a pretty regular basis. Like, these are questions that players have fairly often. So the first thing, and we're just going to go straight down the description, it says that it produces unattached military units every 24 hours, and they're randomly chosen from units that you can produce in your city. So the 24-hour thing, what does that mean? The reality is that it's not actually 24 hours for almost any player unless you are in a level 1 guild. And the reason why is because Alcatraz benefits from the recruitment boost that comes with your guild. So in my case, as a player with a level 77 guild, I get a 33% recruitment boost for any of my unit production. So that means that my Alcatraz is going to produce 33% faster than 24 hours. And as you'll see here, when I collect, now when I go to my Traz, it's going to say, see, now it's only 16 hours until my next collection. It's not really 24 hours. And Endo does not explain that at all with this description. So that is the first misconception. It's not really 24 hours because the recruitment boost that your guild gives affects how fast you get collections from your Alcatraz. Now, with that said, the recruitment boost that is in the tavern does not affect Alcatraz. That would be wildly overpowered, and I'm so glad that it doesn't. And yet, with that said, I really am glad that the recruitment boost from the guild does benefit. And that's one of the benefits of being in a higher level guild, is that you do get that extra recruitment boost, and it does help you to produce units faster. All right, so the second part is the randomly chosen from any type that can be produced in your city. So there's several things to talk about with that, because there's two key components. One is that they're randomly chosen, and two is that anything that you can produce in your city. And the reason why that you can produce in your city is particularly interesting is because if a building, like a military building, is not actually constructed, like you have it and it's being built, or say it's disconnected over here, like right now my future tramps retreat is disconnected. Normally it's connected over here. I actually disconnected it for the purpose of explaining this. You still have that factored into the units that are randomly chosen from with Alcatraz. So one of the cool things that I'm going to use FoE helper here and show you that with this last collection that I did, I still ended up getting, here they are, I still ended up getting 3 future age champions, despite the fact that my champ retreat is disconnected. So it's to say that you can produce in your city is a little bit fuzzy wording, because say, heck, if this building wasn't even fully constructed, say, a lot of players, this is a really common thing that high-end players do, is they won't have a whole lot of military buildings. They may have like one rogue hideout, and then they just keep a space where they'll just build whatever barrack they need units on. So say they know that they're going to be in a contemporary fight, they might throw some AAVs or some assault tanks in. They'll collect their Traz, and then they'll have a nice little stockpile of that type of unit. And that, again, that's a very common practice, especially if you're not a high volume fighter or something like that, where you're not going through hundreds of units in a day. Then that's perfectly practical. Now, obviously, I like to have my barracks, but this helps you to be selective. So that is the second misconception, is that the building has to be connected to the road and that it has to be built, because that's not true at all. It absolutely doesn't have to be connected to road, and it absolutely does not have to be constructed. And then the last thing is that a lot of players think that the ratio is based exclusively on the amount of buildings that you have in your city, and that it will hold true. So say, for example, you have one rogue hideout and you have one hover tank base, right? A lot of players think, okay, well, it should be 50% hover tanks and 50% rogues. And that's not random. That's not actually how it works out. Now, over the course of collecting for a bunch of days, you may end up seeing that type of behavior, but that's not actually the behavior that you observe on a day-to-day basis. So in the example that I gave just a second ago, where I mentioned that, say you needed some assault tanks, you might put your assault tank barrack in and collect, and you might only get 30% assault tanks instead of 50% assault tanks. And that is because it is truly random, and it's random on on a basis of every single unit, right? So, well, here, let me just jump to where I was going with that. I actually clicked on the wrong thing. So, how do I put this? For each of the units that your Alcatraz will select, it is a random roll for each one. So, say you have 10, right? It will randomly select from the barracks in your city 10 separate times. And that gives you some really inconsistent collections. You can see here as I go through these collections that I was just kind of saving, I don't have a particularly large, like there's not a difference in like the number of rogue hideouts in my city, or there's not a difference in the number of champion retreats, either tomorrow era or future era. And you can see, like, I only have one future era champion retreat, and I have 4 sentinel barracks in my city. So it makes absolutely no sense that there would be 3 future champions and only 5 sentinels. And then the same thing, I only have 2 tomorrow era champion retreats. I had 7. There's, were it truly a ratio based, that's not what you would observe. But what we can observe is that there is some amount of correlation, but it is not a one-to-one. Like in this collection here, you see there's not even a single future era champion that was collected, and the sentinels were at a higher ratio. And over time, as you build these up, you'll see that it averages out. But again, in a smaller sample size, that's not what you observe. And then again, here, same thing. You see, I had the 3 champions. There's 4. So that doesn't make sense. I have twice as many of the future champions as I have the TE champions, and yet the numbers play out like that. And then for the sentinels, I had 4 sentinel barracks, only 2 champions, and yet it's not double. So really, the point here is that now, when you only have 2 barracks, you have a lot of randomness in your collection, right? And what I mean by that is you have a 50-50 chance of what you're going to get. So that means that you have actually a really high chance of, when you do a collection, that it's going to skew very heavily one direction or the other. And as you get more barracks in your city, that tends to stabilize your collection considerably, and it makes it a lot more predictable. So say you had 2 rogue hideouts and 2 of these CE tank barracks. I don't know why I keep picking that one, but I do. If you say that's what you have, well, if you have 2 and 2, you're going to have a much more consistent collection, and it's going to be much closer to that 50-50 split that you would expect, right? And as you get more and more, so if you had 8 and 8, you would get even closer to a more consistent 50-50 split. I don't know that really necessarily matters, because again, over the course of several weeks, that doesn't really make that big of a difference. But for a player that lives and dies by their Traz collection, and that is how they get all of their main units for fighting, that's definitely something that they need to keep in mind. All right, guys, I hope this helped to clear up some of the confusion about whether you had to have your barrack connected, whether it even had to be fully constructed, and then also how that whole random thing works, and then of course how quickly your Traz collects. And if this video helped you at all, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.